Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, April 27th, 7 p.m., and tonight we are in committee meetings. We will have the Committee of the Whole with several agenda items, then followed by Transportation, City and Safety Services, and our Finance and Personnel Committee meetings. Just a very brief information about our Committee of the Whole meeting. Our first presentation will be by about the Social Security Act, and then we will follow with the discussion, our fuller discussion as promised, of the Number Fest. So without further ado, I'd like Councilmember Kent Butler to introduce Warren Hayden about the Social Security Act resolution.
Thank you, President Isley. Yes, briefly this evening, we have a presentation and discussion from Warren Hayden, who approached Council about looking at celebrating the 80th birthday of the Social Security Act, which was introduced by President Roosevelt in 1935. So without further ado, Mr. Hayden, thank you.
Is there a microphone? You might have read my guest opinion piece in the Messenger yesterday. Back in January, I was curious about the expansion of Medicaid in Athens County. I previously worked for Athens County Job and Family Services. I was surprised to find that an additional 3,000 people were added to the rolls, increasing the Medicaid population to over 15,000. It was about a 25% increase. Simultaneously, I was reading a book about the first 3 years of the Johnson administration when Medicare and Medicaid were passed, and realized that this year was the 80th anniversary of Social Security and the 50th anniversary of Medicare and Medicaid. Originally, I thought maybe 1 out of 5 Athens County residents got a benefit from one or more of these programs. I quickly found out there's over 15,000 on Medicaid, over 15,000 on Social Security, and about 10,000 on Medicare. These are very important programs. It's estimated that elderly poverty would go from about 8 or 9% to about 45% without Social Security. Obviously, Medicare, prior to Medicare, there virtually was no insurance for elderly. They paid out of pocket. I had a grandmother who remarked when Medicare was passed that, maybe they wouldn't have to go bankrupt if they got ill. And Medicaid, I mean, there's over 15,000 people who probably would not have access to regular health care without it. These are important programs that I think they need to be celebrated. And you'll, if you read the piece, on May 13th at noon at the courthouse, there will be a celebration. There's going to be 2 birthday cakes. There will be 2 oversized birthday cards, 2 feet by 3 feet, that people can sign in support of these programs. And there will be about 13 people, each given only 2 minutes to talk about various aspects. Hopefully, this resolution passes, and one of you can come and present it on May 13th at noon. I could go on, but I'll let you ask questions.
Thank you. Any questions from Council or comments?
Thank you, Warren. I appreciate you bringing this forward to us. One of the questions now, was this number, because I know under employees that had retired under PERS,
Right.
There was a point in there that they are not covered under Social Security or Medicaid or Medicare. That's why PERS had...
No, OPERS people may not be eligible for Social Security or reduced Social Security. A few hadn't paid into Medicare, but most of them are eligible for Medicare. And whether it's OPERS or STRS, offer additional Medigap or Advantage programs. So these are right from the Social Security website, both for Social Security and Medicare, and actually these are older figures. They're not very up to date. They're like 2012, 2013. But for Medicaid, that was as of December of last year. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Any other questions or comments?
Okay, well, I hope you can. And should I come back next Monday?
Actually, we have a comment from our mayor. Warren. Thank you, Warren.
Will we have to sing happy birthday?
Hadn't planned on that, unless you want to lead it.
I'll think about it.
Okay.
And just wanted to thank you for bringing to light through this resolution an important part of the benefits that are provided to the Athens County residents here. And with our high poverty levels, it's a critical program to providing services.
Well, and most people think they'll never have to use Medicaid, but if you end up in a nursing home for any length of time, which costs $70,000 to $80,000 a year, many people end up on Medicaid after a few years. And Medicaid pays about 65% of all nursing home costs. Medicare pays some. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren.
Thank you.
Thank you, President.
Noon at the courthouse, May 13th. It's a Wednesday. Come get a piece of cake. Come sign the birthday cards. And I'm hoping, because I know Kent and Chris are going to be out of town, if someone could come and read the resolution, make a few comments, but then again, I'm talking 2 minutes, so.
Thank you.
All right, do I need to come back
We'll
Monday
likely
at all?
find somebody. It's up to you. It's a one reading resolution that will be on the schedule for next
I can
Monday
come,
night.
that's not a problem.
That would be welcome.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. All right, our next agenda item is the Number Fest. And last week we did have some comments from citizens, and I'm glad to see some of you here again tonight and also some new folks. What we did promise was further discussion, and what we'd like to do is, at least tonight, look at this as an information gathering at this stage, because we've had lots of articles in the press and different suggestions, but we would like to gather information. So what we'll do is we have invited Captain Ralph Harvey from the police department here as a guest. I'd like to give him the opportunity to speak first. We'll then open it up to council member and administration discussion, and then comments from citizens who are here and interested in presenting. What we'll do when we open it up for the citizen comment is have the same kind of format we had last week, where you come in and sign up at the podium, announce your name, and then we'll have 3 minutes to speak. So Captain Harvey, if you would come share information with us, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. I was asked to come, as the President said, and I can share with you my experiences. I was working that day, as well as some statistics that I compiled that I think you might be interested in. Would you like, you can ask me questions first, or I can just kind of tell you what
Why
I
don't you
already know.
just present some of your information first, and then we'll open it up for questions amongst council and administration.
Okay. The event was very busy, but our statistics don't necessarily reflect that. Let's start off with arrests. We essentially, what I went through is I went through and found arrests that are directly, ones that are directly from Numbers Fest. Either we arrested them on the way back or something related. What I can tell you is that there was one domestic violence charge that the individuals were in town for Number Fest. There were 2 intox charges of disorderly conduct by intoxication. I personally made one of those arrests myself of a female that was extremely intoxicated. We had one fighting charge that was 2 individuals fighting, and it turned into an assault on one of our officers and a police horse. And what they said they were fighting about was payment over fest tickets. So the one was disputing if the other one owed him money, basically. That are all of the arrests that I could find that were directly attributable. I can tell you for the weekend that we had from Friday until Monday, so Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday, we had about 140 calls for service, roughly, and there were a total of 17 arrests throughout the entire weekend. But that also includes things like citations, like a on-view arrest, say a open container, would be considered an arrest in that number. And there were 3 OVIs, or drunk drivers, during the weekend. That is on par with any other spring weekend for us. A little bit busier as far as calls for service and arrests. And that is why I say that the statistics don't necessarily reflect how busy we were. And the reason for that, in my view, is we had a limited amount of resources that were then, we weren't making physical arrests because we were dealing with traffic issues, both pedestrian, obviously, as well as vehicular traffic, and the other calls that occur during that time period. We had anywhere between, depending on what time of day, between 5 and 10 officers working. Now, that does not include myself or the chief. We both came in. And by the way, the chief apologized for not being here. He's out of town, so that's why you're talking to me. So that doesn't count us. And 5 of those were being paid as an off-duty detail by the company that was running it. 2 were at the intersection of 682 and West Union for traffic control. And then we had 1 that was at the Oblinus Hospital to assist their staff. And I'll get to that in a minute. As well as 2 others at different points during the day were at certain the pickup locations to help with the pedestrian and vehicle traffic there. So those 5 were not paid directly by us. They were paid as an off-duty detail. But then we brought in a few extra officers that we would normally bring in on any weekend. We ended up bringing them in a little earlier. So mostly to supplement our officers for traffic control issues. As I said, there was 1 officer that was assigned to the hospital, and that was a precautionary measure because they have been overwhelmed down there. Their security staff a couple years ago had asked us to have an officer down there, which the promoter, the company, paid them directly, as I said. EMS, I got stats from Chief Caleb's of Athens County EMS, and he said there were 81 patients seen during the event, and of those, 26 were transported to the hospital, and 2 ended up being life-flighted out of that incident. I don't have a lot of details on those, although I have some that Chief Caleb's has provided me. What I can tell you is that the pedestrian crowds, as they came back in, once they made the decision to shut the buses down, the pedestrian traffic was there was always some, but most of it was not a problem because they were staying out of the roadway. But once they shut the buses down and then the waves would come in, generally speaking, the crowds were not riotous. I've dealt with 7 riots in my career, and this was not necessarily a riotous crowd in that they did things that we asked them to do. When we stopped them to let vehicle traffic, they would stop. When they had the ability to get up on the sidewalk, they did. Now, what they did beyond, there was some damage to property, as I said. There was a couple criminal damaging. There were 2 other criminal damaging incidents that were reported. Obviously, there's more than 2, but that's what we have as reported. So that's pretty much what I can tell you at this point. Welcome if you have any questions or about this. I'm
Yes,
happy to
Councilmember
answer.
Fall.
Yes.
That's also not including the arrests that were on site from, I talked to the safety people.
Correct. That does not include any of their numbers or the Sheriff's Department's numbers.
Right, so that's just the city.
That's just what my officers arrested at that point that have, the charges have been filed and that they have been arraigned on. There may be some others that we have charged but have not been arraigned yet. That's unlikely at this point, but so.
Right. And I had one other question.
Go ahead.
It's a state route. How does, it's a state, so how does the State Highway Patrol figure into all this if it's a state route?
They Well, the State Road Patrol has jurisdiction on any highway.
Right.
Whether it's inside our jurisdiction or not. They did assist. I believe most of their assistance was actually like out on 50 and where the reroute out 19 in that area.
Okay.
But as far as a state route, it's a state route and then it's a city street. So once it's inside the city, we maintain it.
Okay.
It's concurrent jurisdiction. Sorry.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Other council members? Yes, council members.
Yes.
I just have a
Cochran.
question about your perceptions about the ratio of calls for service that you were able to respond to versus those the force was unable to respond to. We've heard from a number of residents who've said, I called the police, they were busy with other things because obviously we have finite resources. So how many, calls went unanswered that day, to your knowledge?
I would hesitate to say any went unanswered. There were a number probably that were a delay in response. Myself personally, I was actually riding with a patrol officer for a while when I first got there, just as a second officer, when there was a lot of things, a lot of people moving around, a lot of potential issues. And we actually checked on an individual that was supposed to be in a backyard somewhere. That call had been delayed because of other more pressing, violent calls that we had, or on-site things, such as there was an individual that we got a report of somebody that had wandered down the bike path over towards the ball fields and was intoxicated and harassing people over at the ball fields. And of course, that's actually happening, so we went on things like that first. So I don't think that there were any that were completely unanswered, although there were some that probably were quite delayed.
Yeah, Councilmember Reisner?
Can I follow up on that? I agree that it probably wasn't unanswered, but delayed, but could you say the average delay was like a half an hour or an hour, some period of time?
I wouldn't know exactly. I think half hour would be a very large number. I would say more like 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the most. Now, there were some noise complaints and things like that that are, an anonymous noise complaint during the day is going to take a very low priority because there's very little action we can take on an anonymous during the day. And I know some of those probably were delayed, maybe half an hour, maybe even more. But something such as an individual in a backyard or somebody, that wouldn't be as delayed. We wouldn't put that on the back burner as far. So.
But you prioritize the responses. Right. A more serious crime or event gets first priority.
Correct. Someone
making noise gets lower. So.
Correct,
right.
Correct. Anything, violence towards persons obviously is the first priority, active violence, and something like that would be dispatched immediately. Even if all units are tied up, the dispatcher would broadcast that we have, say, an active domestic at this location, and then an officer would break free from something, say they're on a report, they would break free and handle that. So yes, there's a delay there, but it's a minor delay. Now, something like a noise complaint at that same time period, the dispatcher probably wouldn't even dispatch that right away until somebody was free. So, yes.
Councilmember Patterson.
It's just kind of a follow-up to both these lines of questions, and would it be safe to say that Athens PD was specifically looking at and addressing issues associated with the fest, and therefore, things going on elsewhere in the city may have taken a lower priority, except for, like you said, bodily injury, or things of that nature? I'm sure that they would have responded, but was the fest pretty much being targeted by Athens Police Department?
The fest was generating the most things that needed addressed immediately, yes, I would say that, yes.
Councilmember Butler.
I have a question similar. When the fire department has an all-call, I'm wondering if this would be parallel or similar, such as Halloween, where we're staffed to the tilt. Is this the kind of event that might require us to have a police all-call, or to staff, or to be much more prepared than we have been in the past?
That's a possibility. That's definitely something. I've already started making some plans, some potential what-ifs, scenarios. There's variable levels there.
Sure.
when we bring in additional staff, say for like what we do with Palmer Fest, we bring in a number of officers, foot officers, mounted officers. The Highway Patrol sends in their mobile field force at our request. Those are all resources we have, but there's obviously a cost. A cost not just in dollars, but cost in personnel, and how much, what do we need to push at this event. I can say that we can have a lower level, something like High Fest. High Fest, we did not bring in officers from out of town. We didn't bring in mounted officers. We didn't ask the mobile field force to come in. Those are things we could do for High Fest. Those things we could do for this. But there's the decision point. At what point do we expend these resources for these events? And every year we learn something about any fest, this one being one. So I can't say exactly what we would do, but I can assure you that I'm planning for a couple different things. If things change out there, and if the pedestrian issue is mitigated, that would any change of infrastructure at the site would change what we would want to do, what I would recommend doing.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Pappy.
Yes, thank you. So many people say we have 2 police forces in this town, and we don't have the statistics tonight from the Ohio University Police Department. Do you have any information? Did you cross any information with them? I assume they were out and patrolling.
They were, and they assisted as well. The Sheriff's Department asked for assistance at one point. I believe it was right as they were shutting the busing down.
I think it was was there an all-call or something?
It's not exactly an all-call. That's more of a fire term, but it was what is sometimes we used to call a Code 10, which is assist another officer or another agency.
Right.
It wasn't an urgent thing, as in an officer. It's not a distress call, meaning an officer is actively being assaulted or in a violent situation, but that they needed assistance, and that's actually Gloucester Police Department. I actually was standing there working with a Gloucester officer about 2 hours, helping direct traffic. So they put out that asked for assistance, and OU assisted them as well, and us. OU had a couple officers on West Union Street, mostly at some of their locations, but also other places that we needed them.
So as a couple follow-up questions, you said that the organizer paid to have additional staff there. For instance, we've all read in the newspaper, and some people, I know of a business that had to close near the Palmer. They couldn't have business going on. One officer to control thousands of people trying to get on buses.
That was something else that we were. I'm sorry. I didn't
a concern.
I'm sorry.
That was a concern.
Yes. There was some misunderstanding. I don't know what exactly happened. Originally, Roller Bowl was supposed to be a pickup location. That then shifted to the Palmer Place parking lot on Stimson. I don't know when that change occurred. I know that it created confusion, and that created a bunch of people at one location thinking they were going to get picked up when they really weren't. They were going to get picked up there. And the way it was explained to me ahead of time wasn't that it was going to be thousands of people waiting, that it would be a bus pickup location. And in the past, we haven't seen that huge number at a one bus pickup location. And that's when the lieutenant that was on duty, our lieutenant, actually called me and said, these crowds are getting huge in the bus pickup locations. Not sure what the problem is, but we're worried about potential problem.
Right.
And that's when myself and the chief and then the 2 other officers that were already coming in came in even earlier to help deal with that. But it mitigated relatively quickly because additional buses started running at that point. Their large number of buses didn't start early enough is what the lieutenant conveyed to me as his thoughts. Okay. And by the time I got there, in less than an hour, the crowds were gone.
And so if there was an unsafe situation on a bus, which we've also heard of, who would have, I realize there's 90 people on a bus, I don't know how many
They were
You know-
large school buses, basically.
So who would have stopped the bus? I mean, would you have even had time to do that? I mean, I'm wondering with one person or even two people in those kinds of situations, if that would be a difficult situation to manage.
Possibly. I mean, it all depends on what's happening.
Right.
And that's one person that's stationed there. Obviously, we have other officers that are within close distance of them.
Okay.
And we would have to deal with that individually. We've never seen major problems at a pickup location, but that's not to say that it wouldn't happen. The pickup locations are earlier in the day, and this is, like I said, the first time that we've seen that large of a crowd. Normally it is that you're just keeping them, you're making sure that people aren't walking out into the street or just being a presence, rather than having to corral or deal with that number of people.
Council passed an ordinance many months ago about taxi services, unlicensed taxi services, and it's been reported that there was many situations like that. But I'm assuming with the number of officers, that would be difficult to pull over and cite. That would be lower in the priority list?
To some extent. And that's another place that we would look at. We deal with overloads in that if they're traveling outside, say in the bed of a truck, and they're sitting up on the edges of the truck or hanging off the back, that we're going to address, and we did address. There were a number of traffic stops, and some of them I'm sure were related to that, where they were un-overloading vehicles. Now, were we writing a lot of tickets for that? Probably not. We have tried to do that in the past, but therein lies another problem, is if you get them all out of the truck, then where do they go? So we deal with the safety issues, whether it's there may be a technical violation of a taxi ordinance or something like that, but we're going to be trying to deal with, we got to prioritize. We got to deal with the safety issues first.
And then I had one other follow-up question.
And then we need to move on
Cost.
to others.
We all know the costs of Halloween. I think we run anywhere from $60,000 for the additional people we bring in, that the city takes on that cost. So you were talking about, again, you just kind of referenced it in terms of how much it would, there's an additional cost when you bring in extra people from other jurisdictions.
Correct.
And I know that happens with the other smaller fests inside the city limits. So there is a cost. I don't know if the public realizes how much the city spends to keep Halloween safe. So
that's very accurate, and we are to some extent reactionary. I mean, we're going to have to react. We can't be as proactive, especially with this one, because it's actually occurring outside where our jurisdiction is. But there are resources, as I said, that we can bring into bear, and the outside agencies, but there's a cost, but there's also an expectation of safety. We are
right.
Public order. We need to maintain public order, and so we can do it either way. I mean,
I was just handed a piece of paper that has the fests total for Mill, High, and Palmer, and those three fests at almost 75,000. But that doesn't include Halloween.
It does not. So we were just discussing.
So
Palmer was our highest level of preparation and cost, and it's almost closer to 30 than the 25. So that's.
And then on top of that, we have Halloween that we prepare for.
Palmer, if you wanted to do as you say, an all-call for this fest,
yes,
I believe it's going to be on par with Palmer, because the thing that you have with Palmer Fest is it lasted longer than the other fests. It drug out into the night, which significantly drove up costs because everybody is on overtime now. Mm-hmm. Not just police, but fire, all the city services are then. So you're probably going to, I would say you'd be closer to a Palmer level cost than you would say, I think High was our cheapest, should be, because we didn't bring in outside agencies.
This year?
This year we did not. Now, that may be something that needs to be done for all these events.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other council members, any other comments, questions, comments?
Just to follow up on this, and
Councilmember
I'll keep this short. And it's basically, I keep looking at this as being, this is the amount of money when you start adding all these things up for the fests and potentially for something in the future, we're talking, a police officer's salary. So what could have been applied to that, we're not, and we're losing that, and that's sad.
Myself, the chief, and others, we've been looking at other options. I mean, other ways to allocate the resources that we have to try to protect the city's people and property. That's what we do.
You've been doing a great job.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Canterbury.
Yeah, just one quick follow-up to Council Patton's comment on the taxi service. And I understand about the public safety factor of it. But I walked all through town the whole day, up to the International Street Fair and everything, and I noticed, that was one of the big things I was looking for was pickup trucks. And again, there was with the signs up in the back of the window, $5 rides. And I thought that was what our ordinance was done, to try to help eliminate some of those. And also in Stimson, I noticed, there was people beating on cars as they was riding by. I even sent a message, trying to find out where the buses was. So I guess that, what are we going to look at in the future? If we have an ordinance with the taxi service, how, what's the answer to enforcing that?
I don't have any really good answer for you other than if we have additional officers on, which we can do additional enforcement. It's very difficult, when you're faced with, where do I put my 5 officers? What do I tell them to do? And it's easy in hindsight to say, well, we should have stopped that truck that had the $5 sign on it. The problem is that $5 sign, I refer to it as Pandora's car. Okay, you stop that one individual that you think is going to be a 15-minute write a ticket and get him out of here, and it turns into something else, and it turns into something else, and now that officer is not available to deal with this active domestic because now they have an arrest for an OVI. Now, I'm not saying that the OVI is not as valuable as that domestic, but I have to make a choice of allocating my officers in some fashion. But if we get all 25 officers or 23 officers out there, and we can then do things with that, but there's a cost to that. There's not just a dollar cost, but a personnel cost. It gets very difficult to be working every weekend on massive amounts of overtime. I had officers that were working, 20-some hours overtime in a 2-day period. So, they're getting very little rest. What does that, what level, we got to keep up a certain level of enforcement. We got to keep up a certain level of personal safety as well.
Any other comments or questions from council members or administration?
I would just like to thank the captain, of course. When you're hearing this about arrests and why didn't we stop these taxis, I think the captain's done a nice job of trying to say we need the force that we had at Palmer Fest in order to try to address those level of issues. It essentially be lining West Union Street. Some other things that we do, if you look at these costs, $7,000 for public works, we rent the light plants. So there are lights, and for, that's one of the issues we saw. Even though they had lights at the venue, it's not like the walk back was safe or illuminated in any way. And when you get to the arrest versus manpower, just like the captain said, every arrest takes away 2 officers minimum. And, when we had a shift as we did, frankly, as of last Friday, I think it was my 12th straight day in a row working, and I understand the fatigue level. And the 3 fests came pretty hard and heavy. Then we had Mom's Weekend. I think there was a break for Easter, and then this. But we can plan for it, but we're estimating closer to 30,000 additional costs in addition to members paying. The State Highway Patrol did stop some of those unlicensed taxis when they could get them out on the highway. And the shuttles, Dominic has clearly stated he understood that was a complete failure. So. And then I'm here to listen.
And any other questions specifically of Captain Harvey from council members or administration? Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
and the
Thank you
force
very
for everything you do every day, and especially on this weekend,
Thank you.
presenting tonight.
Thank you.
We do have the OIU arrests as reported by the Post, but it was 117.
117.
117. I know that council members that may have gathered some other additional information this week, and they might want to share that. We'll continue the discussion amongst council members for a little bit longer, and then we'll open it up to audience comments. So very shortly, we'll be hearing your comments. Council members. Council member Fall.
Well, I've called numerous people over the past week. I think the two most interesting conversations I had, I called the safety officers in charge of actually in the fest safety with public safety with alcohol, and they had some interesting. They observed some interesting things going on. They said that they would have, they made 100 and something arrests for underage drinking, and his take was we could have done as many arrests as we possibly could. They just had a limited amount of people. They had everybody from District 19, which is the southeast part down here, and some people down from Columbus. So our officers aren't the only ones who are putting in extra time. I also called just to get information about what responsibilities a music promoter has, in putting on these sort of programs. And I called, there's some pretty famous long, multiple day parties in Ohio. And I called the people who did Bunbury, which has been a very long-running 3-day music festival in Cincinnati, and just talked to her about what they do, their responsibility, their bonding, their insurance, kind of best management approaches. And she had interesting take on some of the things. She was probably most interested in the fact that there is BYOB at this, and she said that's just, you look at most of the festival websites, and it's like no food, no drink. There'd be water, and Nelsonville is the same way. So the BYOB, that people can bring in 90 cans of beer to Numberfest, and that's right on the website. That's the limit that you can bring in. It's 90 cans of beer. So I'm very concerned about BYOB. Several of the people I talked to with the promoters were shocked with that. So I know it's not something that normally goes on at a lot of music concerts. It's not a normal, from the research I did.
Those were the two items the organizer pointed out immediately after that were a failure, the transportation and the BYOB. So he has recognized that.
Other comments, observations? Councilmember Butler.
Thank you. I briefly mentioned this in our previous meeting, but I did speak with business owners that acknowledged they were adversely affected by the fest, specifically Numberfest, lost revenue, difficulty for patrons to come visit them, having to make excuses and apologies to visitors coming into town and patrons and guests as well. I have not heard anything positive, so I think that is very telling. All of the comments and responses I heard from business owners were negative. Thank you.
I would add to that. I had several direct conversations with people near the pickup sites. One place had to close business all day, 8 hours, they lost business. Another, some of the Union Street businesses, flower shops, whatever, it was a nightmare. People could not get to their business. And then the people coming back and forth, and public urination, people having to play police at the door of their establishment so people would not come in and keep them out. Those were specific comments that were told to me that were a real concern. I know I did read the news today and saw some of the things written up in the paper. I think it has to be a real balancing act in a community when you talk about public safety and health. So those were specific concerns that I received. And then on top of that, one other public safety concern is, one of my largest concerns is we had several events in this community that weekend. We had smaller local events, as we heard last week, there on Union Street, but we also had a national event at OU with people brought in for 3 or 4 days. Many of the hotels were booked because of that event. We had the International Street Fair, where I know people who came and left because they did, whether they were teenagers and did not feel safe, whether people were traveling there, somebody else may speak to this, people whose cars were pounded on looking for rides, they turned around and left. And it's been a regular event for them to attend International Street Fair. There were several other things going on that weekend that I think were a real concern that, how did all of this happen? Everybody's supposed to look at their calendars and all that kind of thing when all these happen. So that's just another comment to be made on who takes priority. How does that happen? We are a small community. So,
Councilmember Cochran.
I just want to add, from a family standpoint, this is a real black eye on our community. As Member Pappy said, it really infringed upon some wonderful events that were happening in our community. International Street Fair, the next day, Athens Beautification Day, the Athens Marathon, half marathon. Having our city be full of trash, which of course we had many people out there working on cleaning up that trash. But when you have a marathon starting at 8 a.m., there's going to still be some trash out there on the streets. And that's not the image that I want my city to be putting forward. That's not the image that I want my children seeing when they come uptown for the International Street Fair and have the van windows pounded on and then are cursed for not offering an illegal taxi ride. And that's the same story I've heard from, I think the mayor was asked for a ride as well as many other members of our community. And that's just not okay. It's not something that we should have to be living with. So fortunately, I live far enough away from the festival site itself that in my residence, I was not affected, as were many of the folks who've come today. But even those of us who were not in, our businesses may not have been affected, or our residents may not have been affected, but we're all affected in some way. So, we need to think about what we can do, even though this is not in the city limits. But what can we do to work on the effects for next year?
Additional comments from council members or administration at this point? Okay. What we'd like to do is open now the discussion to citizens who've come and might want to present information. A 3-minute limit if you'd like to come forward and speak about something. And would you like to speak in? Yes. Thank you for coming again.
I'm back, and guys, and I'll probably be back every week until a lot of resolve is done. We've already discussed a lot of what happened and a lot that we didn't feel was a good part for the city as far as safety reasons. I think it's too big of a party. I don't know how you can take a state highway and allow it to close down. And I understand that mostly who took this by the hand was the Sheriff's Department. And they pretty much had the control because it was out of the city limits. But this party starts in the city limits and it comes back to the city limits. So we've already discussed all those issues. But now you're talking about what do we do for next year? I tell you what we do for next year. We don't let the damn thing happen. Period. And I mean, there's too many issues at hand here. Again, I was in the middle of all this with a sea of wall, thousands of people around me. So I know what it felt like. And if I had never seen it or been through it, I would not have a clue of what was going on. And from last week, I was on Union going down to Schaefer Street at the entrance to Oblenis. I had to travel from Restore to Schaefer in the middle lane. At the entrance of O'Blennis, I had to see thousands of people around me. There would have been no way that the police could have got into, or the EMS could have got into there. As the sergeant had stated, the officer that they placed at O'Blennis was on the Schaefer Street side. So nothing was on Union Street. But anyway, my resolve, or I just think that we need to forget it all together. Or if you're not going to, I just can't understand how you can make it last. How you can make it safe out there. You can't with that many people. Not when you're probably next year there'll be 30,000. Last year they took over the streets, and again this year they took over the streets. When are you going to say no? Enough's enough. And it is a black eye on our city. And we have a beautiful city. I've been here for damn near 40 years. But this kind of stuff, and it's all because of OU, it's treated as a drunken bash. We're adults here. Why can't you see what's wrong with this whole problem and just say no? So I would come to all the meetings, and that's going to be my word, probably here on out. So, and then the main thing too, you've got the police department, the sheriff's department, you've got OU, and you've got you guys. But you've got all these different departments that need, if you're going to do something to resolve, to quit, stop it all together, you need to get together and team it. And you all throw it out on there together and work as a team rather than trying to say, well, I'm the police department, or well, I'm the sheriff's department, and I'm city council. So you guys all need to get together and form a team, and let's kind of squish it now. Thanks.
Thank you.
I don't have a paper to sign.
Okay. Thanks for the comments. Others who wish to speak tonight?
I spoke last week too, and I live directly across the street. I'm the first house outside of the city limits, and so I have a bird's eye view of what goes on. And I watch the emergency squads come in, inching down the road, going into the place, and I thought, are they going to take them down Radford, or are they going to try to get back down 56? And they went back down 56. I watched their rear lights at the top of the hill stopped because they couldn't get through. And as far as I'm concerned, the emergency squad alone is enough to squelch this and put an end to it. And last year they said it would be better. This year it wasn't any better. And so, are they just going to keep letting them do it and say, we're going to make changes and it's going to be better next year, and the same thing's going to happen? It's a state route. You can't just close a state route for a bunch of drunk people. Sorry. But I think something needs to be done. And I agree, it needs to be stopped.
Thank you. Oh, and if you would sign in.
no paper.
There's
no sheet there. I'm sorry.
There's no sheet here.
Okay, and what's your name again? I'm sorry.
Cindy Parker.
Cindy Parker. Okay, thank you. Get it down for the record.
Oh, can I say one more thing?
Sure.
I just say one more thing about the arrests. Okay, if they're busting windows on the buses, why is nobody arrested? They're not supposed to stop people off in my driveway, but they do. And at that time, it's not even crazy and chaotic. They could write those people tickets. If there's no consequences, every parent knows, if there's no consequences, they're just going to keep doing it. So they need to be writing them tickets. They need to be arresting people. And they're not, because they're afraid of the crowd being a riot. So if they're afraid to do their job because of the size of the crowd, then there should be something done about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you could tell us your name again, please.
Yeah, it's Jamie Strucker.
Okay.
Well, first thing, I just want to say real quick that I did call, as I said last week, I called the Athens Police Department about 10:30 to report some unlicensed cabs. In fact, it was kids piling into the back of a pickup truck, and some kids, like a dozen of them, piling into a car. So, that looked pretty unsafe to me, and I was told that the police department just was too busy, and I understand that there's a limit, but I just want to say that that did actually happen, that there was at least one call that was not responded to. I want to bring up some questions about the cost and the safety of this event. I'm wondering what's the cost to city officials in terms of the planning, because I feel like the city and ODOT and other agencies are kind of holding the hand of the event promoter to, help him figure out all these problems that are really his responsibility. And I'm wondering how much time the city is putting into that and what could be spent on doing other, perhaps more interesting things. I'm wondering what is the potential cost to the city in terms of litigation. I know there was a potential, or someone tried to sue the sheriff's department a few years back for an injury that she had at Numberfest because I believe a sheriff's horse stepped on her foot and she lost part of her toe. And that lawsuit didn't go through, but it makes me wonder, could something like that happen with the city, and would they be facing a lawsuit? And finally, I just want to bring up some possible safety issues. My understanding is that it's an event like this needs to have an emergency evacuation plan filed with the presiding fire department, and I checked with the sheriff's office, and they said that that had not happened, or at least they had no records pertaining to that. There was, of course, the BYOB issue. The property or the promoters did file for a liquor permit, but there were a number of problems with that, including the property owner being listed as Dominic Petrozzi when the application was made, which may have been before he owned the property, which is owned by the venue of Athens LLC, not by Dominic Petrozzi anyway. But there were a lot of, as we know, there are a lot of issues with liquor control at this event, and it's surprising to me that I ran out of time. So yeah, lots of issues, more than I had time to cover. Thank you.
Thanks for coming back. We appreciate the comments. And Service Safety Director Mosley, I'm assuming I'm sure we will be gathering costs, but it does take time to gather all that information.
Yes, what I'd like to say to Ms. Strecker is if she had additional things she didn't get in, if you could email me and so that we capture all of her concerns. Since I was,
yes, Maxine.
My name is Maxine Rantain, and was Petrozzi bonded for this event in any way?
That's something I think the sheriff is the lead agency for this event because it takes place in the county.
Right.
The city is dealing with the externalities of this particular event.
Right.
That's one reason why we're all so frustrated.
Right.
There's bonding issues, insurance issues, and those need to be addressed to the sheriff because they're the one who provides the permit.
Okay.
And they sign off on the F2 alcohol permit also. Okay. And they need to look at that. And we don't have jurisdiction.
But can the city send a bill to the sheriff?
We'd love to. This is an issue of externalities being placed on the city because of the site.
That's right.
That all the profits that are being privatized by this individual and this company, while the costs are being forced onto the public entity. And the sheriff and the county commissioners are the lead people in this. We're just dealing with the aftermath. So. Okay. That would be my comment for a lot of people who are out in TV land. The sheriff, the sheriff is the lead person who signs off on.
Okay. Well, I think there should be some bond issue with this because we can't incur the cost of this every year. I don't know how we can shut it down. I don't know how we could shut down all the little, it would be okay if we had maybe one fest, but this is getting out of hand. The other thing is that we did call from Psychopath on Union, and that was never answered, and that was motorcycles on the sidewalk with all the people waiting for buses and all the people in the street, and they were trying to get in for a poker run, and they were riding their motorcycles, and we called the police station, and they said, "We're sorry, they're too busy with the fest." And it was never responded to. They probably thought by the time they got there, the motorcycles would be gone and it would be useless, but it was still an issue. So we didn't have safety in the city. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. And we could share with you that the county is also going to be gathering information. So, yes, Janet. Yes,
Just
yes, sure.
Clarification on liquor permits. The sheriff wouldn't actually approve or disapprove liquor permits. We get paperwork, and it is basically, we are acknowledging it's happening.
Right, sorry.
So the chief of police, like inside the city, when there's a temporary permit, it is, only we're just acknowledging. So the sheriff couldn't deny a liquor permit if it's otherwise proper. So, and thank you for letting me know about that. I'll look into that. I don't remember that call. I was working. What time was that?
4, 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
2 or 3. Okay, that was before I got there. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Yes.
Hi, I'm Janet Polzer, and Dennis E. Powell. If you take my picture, I want you to get rid of these neck wrinkles. Photoshop me. I would like to say that I have the commissioners are meeting tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and I have some time at 9:30. So anybody who wants to speak is welcome to speak on my dime at 9:30. I think there are going to be a lot of people there, I hope. I'm also scheduled to speak at the Township Trustees meeting at 5:30 tomorrow night, if anybody wants to come to that. I would like to read 2 things that I got from people who couldn't be here tonight. One person asked me to read her email to me. Her name is Kim Cochran, I'm pretty sure. And she has a board meeting tonight. No, it's not Cochran, because Ms. Cochran, this has to do with your comments. Kim, I'll think of her name. I so hope Numberfests go away. I had to get my sister-in-law's home off Route 56, and it took forever last year. I had my young grandson with me, which was a huge mistake. We got behind a truck stuffed full of kids drinking, making out, pitching bottles out of the side of the truck onto properties. Fingers being flipped at passersby, and the worst offense, the girls got out of the back of the pickup and pulled their shorts off right there in the road, urinating in front of my husband, myself, my grandchild, and everyone else who cared to view. When I finally arrived to where the police officer was standing, I vehemently complained to him, and he just responded, "Ma'am, we're just trying to get them out, get them where they're supposed to be. All kinds of laws are broken, and we as a community have to accept that." We stupidly got stuck coming and going in the same traffic this year. Getting to our destination wasn't too hard, although a car stopped abruptly in front of us on 682 to let their passengers open the car door to vomit. But coming back, there were those staggering on and off the road. What if we would have hit one of them? It was awful. I keep hearing, this is now my own comment, I keep hearing Dominic says he'll do better. He'll do better. Oh, next time he's going to address this issue, and I just wonder how many chances we as a community are going to give him. Who takes priority? I say that the residents. And now 5,000 cars next year? How's that a solution? So I'm hoping that the council can meet with the commissioners and the township trustees. I don't know, just so that we can all talk. There's on the Messenger website. There's this. If I can finish, there was a very brief treatise from Shirley Daly. I'm not real sure when she wrote this. Trying to get a family, but it was for this last fest. Trying to get a family member to a Blennis hospital Saturday night at 9:30 p.m. He was having a heart attack, and it proved to be quite difficult. This is.
We'll let you finish. We'll let you finish.
Well, okay, this would be 10,000 students and others were blocking the road, the shortest route to the hospital. The family was advised to take 682, the longest route, and there were still crowds of people. One person refusing to get out of the way, pulling a cooler despite flashing lights and a horn blowing. What is it going to take to get this issue addressed by city, state governments? My relative eventually made it to Riverside Hospital in Columbus at 1:30 a.m. Sunday. Kudos to Oblenis Hospital for their quick attention to the situation. Thank you.
You want to see the folds in my hands from living with Janet for 44 years? No, I'm Greg Polzer, and my lovely wife has been very expressive of her opinion and somewhat mine. I think what we have here, just to sort of like sum it all up, is there was a time that certain people were, because of the gentle and kind nature of this community, certain individuals with a lot more either money or ambition or negative character flaws were able to take advantage of the sweet and kind people of Athens and do things around town, and only later, when they were discovered to be illegal or wrong or not in the best interest of the community, they would say, "Oh, I didn't know that was wrong. I didn't know it was right. It was wrong to shoot deer within the city limits 2 years ago." And I think more and more of the people in the community are starting to realize, hey, this is a pretty nice place. We need to have business. We have to have people to be able to earn a living and feed their families and do all they want. But we also need to have a balance. The students are not evil parts of this town. They're young people, and what do they need? They need guidance. They need to have expectations as parents, as teachers, as coaches. I think many of us know that all you have to do is tell them pretty much what's expected of them, and this is the bottom line, and they would respond. So when I saw on last Saturday night when the police were asking the kids to stay in only half of Route 56 as they were, at the Bataan Death March back to campus, I was kind of stuck. Is this the way things should be running in here? We're talking about all these extraordinary circumstances. It's just not right. And whoever, there's so many different groups that understand it, but they realize they need to get together and do something for the community at large. And if it's have the fest go away, fine. But let's do it for the betterment of the community that you're here serving and we care about, and the students would care about too, with some reasonable expectations. So thank you.
Thank you. Other people who might like to comment, add information?
I would like to add something.
Okay.
Just a second.
Just one last comment. Yeah.
One really quick second here is that we have all the other fests that's going on in the city, and it's very easy to get around these fests. And to compare this fest or put this fest in the same group as those in the city is plain ludicrous, because it just doesn't compare. And I think, because it's OU students mostly, take it back over to the ferry or to the ball field off of Mill Street. Beautiful place, and you can get in and out of there and there'll be no problem. That's it.
All right. Any other comments or? Councilmember Canterbury.
I've listened. Number one, thanks everyone for coming tonight and speaking on this. I did invite Ted Lenskett to come tonight, but he got called away to a meeting in Cincinnati, so he couldn't be here. And I also invited Lenny Elias and one of the commissioners to be here tonight. I sat down on a meeting with the group from out on Winsall Drive, and everything that we was told that was worked out actually fell. So I agree with that. Everything that they had promised and told us was ludicrous. It fell. So some of the things that I've been doing myself was I have been talking with some of the county officials on it, and one of the things that we've looked at that I've talked with them about was one of the things the city can do is annexation, because that way you can control it by controlling the venue, controlling the people that come in and out of there, so you can write your rules how you want to do it. Talked with several about crowd control issues, which is in the ORC. And actually even about zoning, which when you go outside the city of Athens, it really becomes a problem because people are fed a misconception about zoning, and they're not really told the truth about it. I live down on the East End, and I also Had a lot of problems with traffic down there, cars parking. People couldn't even park in their normal places that they park off-street parking because they couldn't. The cars was already down there and they took their places. So I am also going to attend the council meeting or commissioners meeting in the morning also, just to see what kind of answers they want to come up with also.
Thank you.
All right. The only thing I have to add is that there is a meeting scheduled for later this week with the organizer and with all the affected agencies. So also encouraged Mr. Petrozzi to watch tonight's meeting.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
There's a meeting later this week with whom?
The organizer and all the affected agencies have been invited.
What is the affected agencies?
The
Would be police and
police,
fire?
EMS, 911.
Any community members at that meeting or no?
Not at this time, but I would again say that I've heard this. I mean, I'm just one of many people, as you know, the sheriff's heard, everybody's heard. So we will be bringing forth all of the complaints related to this.
Will Ohio University be at that meeting?
I know UPD. Also know that the chief of staff said her neighborhood was impacted in terms of parking Saturday as well. So, there were a lot of people that came from out of town.
Mayor Weil, did you have a comment?
Again, it's outside jurisdiction, but it does affect us. We have a year to play and see what we can do about this. In terms of council actions, you could start with a resolution saying you don't want it. Reading in Athens News, of course, there's obviously some back and forth of how it's a moneymaker for some. We hear the same arguments with Halloween. It is a moneymaker for some, and we never really see that dollar amount. As a city, we just see the bills. As council, you have the power to close down a street, close down West Union to emergency vehicles only. That would impact the businesses for 1 year, for one time. Watching the Facebook dialogue back and forth, there's somebody saying, well, when it gets to the number past 99, we'll show them. So that's what we have to look forward to. How to control that? That's another matter. How many people you want to spend, how many police you want to spend to do this. In theory, if you could make this something that will work, it would be a positive thing. You look at Nelsonville Music Festival, which is a different animal. You look at what Fur Priest Ranch has, which is a different animal. This guy's had 13 times to try and get it right. He hasn't done it yet. It's obviously too big for the location. You can annex it. We can look at our subdivision regulations and see if it fits. We can require better egress and ingress. I really don't know what solutions there are. We have to work together to make this happen or not happen. The question is, do you want to kill it? And if you want to do that, how to do that? Annexation would be one possibility. I'm not sure if you can do it hostile annexation.
I looked into that.
What?
I looked into requirements for annexation.
Are we contiguous and continuous with it? I don't think we are.
Right, and so the issue of, you can't do this, a similar thing to like eminent annexation. That's not allowed under, ORC. And I think one thing the city is doing is we are working on a special events permit. I brought it up a couple weeks ago and people have been working on it, and that's something for our city, but it's a responsibility to address maybe those sort of things that would occur in the city that are similar, to put nail down on it. So I think annexation has been brought up several times. It's not the cure-all from my reading of ORC.
Well, the annexation would be supplying police, fire, et cetera, et cetera. Right. Would be water, sewer.
Well, that's the other question is sewer.
As an owner at this point, we can anticipate more than one a year, right?
Yeah.
Sooner, yes, because he has to pay the taxes and whatever mortgage it is. Eventually, he's going to need infrastructure there. He's going to have to approach either LEAX for water or us for sewer. At that point, and again, the policy is when we supply those things, we have to annex.
Right. And that property is not under the memorandum of understanding for the extension of sewer. And
yes.
That's one thing that should be noted right up front.
Mm-hmm. So, and realize that annexation would require following the noise ordinance.
And
so they might be painting himself into a corner here.
Yes.
And also additional costs for us again. Yeah. More costs, but we're already paying costs.
I'm going to open it up to the audience one more time. Do we have somebody else that wants, anybody else who has not spoken before to make a comment? Yes, if you'd like to come up and speak at the podium.
And then President Eisenstein might have another comment after that as well. Thank you.
My name is Ed Penson. I'm pleased to be with you, and I appreciated the intelligence you all displayed last week at that meeting. It was very inspiring. I was very glad to be here. I have some questions to answer to my friends and neighbors and some colleagues, but I need to just make one statement about the word control. I counted up to 23 times it's been used here, then I gave up, and your records will show how many times it's been used. Control, control, control. If you're dealing with 5,000 students, you have a problem of control. I've been president of 2 universities and vice president at this university. I never imagined 5,000 students in a riot. 10,000 students, impossible. The sheriff is saying 10,000 will be all right. 10,000 will not be all right. If you have 20,000, 25,000, as we've had here, control is not possible. Give up on control. That doesn't happen. It's a fiction. It's imagination, and it's insane. I have a question, though, about whether the council is willing to meet with the county commission, the township trustees, and get this resolved. It needs a meeting of the minds. Now, I know the thing happened in the county, and it crossed the township, but it began in the city. The city can't wash its hands of that. It's accountable. It has to be accountable. So we have to get the teams together and work it out. Find a solution. The solution is available. The solution, if not control, then get rid of it, which is what we should have done a long time ago. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Yes, Councilmember Butler.
Thank you. And I sincerely do appreciate everyone's comments this evening. This is a very challenging issue. I would like to kindly request the mayor's office to send an invitation to the university as well, along with what Member Pappy was saying at this meeting this week. If we could please have, besides the chief of police, I would like to have other administrators present. I think this issue is immense. It did begin at the university as well years ago in the form of what was called Springfest. This is a hole in the calendar that Numberfest is now occupying. And perhaps the challenge that we need to bestow upon the university with this dialogue is to consider them hosting said event. I think there's an airspace that might be better adequately prepared for these numbers. They host large events in the fall on a regular basis, and they're called football games. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I think what we'll do is end the conversation tonight, knowing that we will be coming back with other information. I appreciate the comments, the questions. It's helped inform us so that we can move to the next steps on this. We will move on. I believe we don't have any other committee of the whole discussion items, and so we'll move on to Transportation Committee chaired by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I would also say if there was something that you didn't want get said tonight, if you would like to write us a note, please do that. Okay. Now on to transportation, and I've been logged out. Okay. I'll look over here.
Street paving.
Street paving. This is an interesting topic everybody's excited about. We are looking at putting $350,000 towards our annual street paving budget this year. There is a list of streets listed on our website if you'd like to see which streets are there. Just for conversation purposes, some people wonder how that's done. That's done on a not as needed basis unless it becomes an issue, a significant issue. For instance, Cable Lane has kind of just opened up this year. And so there is a listing. I believe the street tour, our service safety director has that list if we wanted to read that list. So just to let everybody know, we are looking at $350,000 for street paving.
I don't think it's finalized yet, the entire list.
It's not entirely finalized, but I just wanted to discuss kind of a ballpark figure of what we were looking at.
Right. So that we're requesting the authorization, appropriation, et
Right.
et cetera.
Right. So that is, any questions on that from anyone on council?
I have a question.
Yes.
Does this include potholes? No?
That's separate. Hot mixes, the plants are supposed to open this week, and
But
you're
they
going to
will.
see some significant repairs starting once we have that hot mix. So,
East State Street?
yes, we're trying to nurse East State Street along, as you know, because we're scheduled for a main project there, 2016, 2017, and there'll be an overlay at the end. So we'd really just like to try to nurse it along. But yes, we'll keep filling, but hot mix keeps much better. So.
Okay.
That's an important point. The hot mix plant does not open until this week. So that's an important point for people to know. Okay, any questions on street paving?
So the appropriations come out two funds. You've got that covered, right?
funds, yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can-
2020 and 572.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, the next item is our sidewalks. We've had some success now with our sidewalk projects. We're moving forward with 3 sidewalk projects this year: Central Avenue, North Congress, and South May. These are all areas that have tree lawns, or devil strips as they call them in Akron. So we won't be doing any street repair necessarily on those 3 particular streets. We are just going to focus on the sidewalk portion, and we will do our normal review with the appropriation and authorization. We're looking at about $150,000 to be spent, and again, that will come out of 220 and 572, those 2 funds, and we do have that money. We know that money exists in the unappropriated funds. Our auditor gave us the notes, and we're aware of that.
Along with the sidewalks, we're going to use our regular process.
Our regular process of assessing the property owner. Okay. Any questions on sidewalks? Yay. That's been a huge issue. I know everybody that's campaigning, that's a huge issue. And again, these sidewalks several years ago were rated according to their level of, a lot of it's safety. And so we are going through that list yearly to try to repair those sidewalks. That's not a new issue. That, again, how many years ago was that? Did they do the sidewalk
Probably in the
evaluation?
last 2 years, I usually three years
Yeah,
ago.
it's been
Took
about 3.
turns at corners.
Right.
And did things
Right.
like that.
Right. So there is a plan in place with Public Works to meet those sidewalk issues as we move along. Okay.
And the assessment will take process for you guys. Basically, it takes all those readings, the necessity, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So just be
Right.
aware
We
of that.
just finished up one for the Union Street project from last summer, so it does take a while for it to move through the process, realizing the city upfronts the cost, and then property owners are allowed up to 10 years to pay back.
I did have a miscellaneous. I didn't know if you had anything else.
I did want to also mention the water line.
What, line replacement?
Yes. So that's Steve's going to do that. Sorry, Steve. Okay. Okay.
You had requested an update. We had the Columbus Road bike pass for bid opening.
Yes.
On the 23rd last week.
Yeah, Thursday.
And both bids, we had 2 bids, and they both came in significantly high. The engineer's estimate is about 1.425, and the two bids were at 2.5 and 2.1.
What?
So they exceed the 10% over. So what Andy and Jessica are taking back to the table is to separate out the earthwork versus the bridge work. Because they had a high number of plan holders, but with only two major contractors bidding. And part of it being those who are skilled at bridge work, kind of maybe, not that they're not skilled at the earthwork, that they were kind of putting those together. So he's going to attempt to rebid as two separate entities, two separate facets of this project. I don't believe any legislation's needed. It was more just to keep you apprised. So.
And I think the other concern there is with the grant funding, the bids have to be moved forward.
They do, although Andy spoke with staff today that he had thought at the end he'd only have to do like the last pavement overlay. More work may be directed into next year, but I'm sure he's watching those dates fly. So he'd like to turn it around as early as next Monday for a rebid. It depends upon, how their number crunching goes.
Cameron.
We're talking $1 million what we did?
They just say they threw it when they knew that they were already going to be over. Sometimes they'll just do that. They'll just throw a bid. So as to not to play their cards too on the table for the rebid, knowing full well there would probably be that. So.
That was
That's
the
what they told
interpretation.
us.
Yeah. I mean, you don't give away what you really think it's going to cost. You just throw a number out there at that point, knowing if you can't make it over the, you're going to make it over the 10%. You may as well just, give it a shot and hope they come back better.
I mean, we put bids together. It's not like it's a magic number that you just kind of think of. These are actual costs that you put together. Mm-hmm. So you know without somebody bidding. So you know what kind of numbers you got when they put the bid.
So this is the game that the actual people who are bidding, that...
We were being told that this sometimes is a standard practice. Once they realize that they're going to blow the bid by more than 10%, they just throw a number on it. So.
And the way I understand it, that there were other interested parties, but because there's two different animals, excavation versus bridge building, a lot of the other interested parties did not show up. At least that's what I'm hearing.
So it sounds like it makes sense to try to separate the project out.
Yeah, reconfigure it to make it work. Hopefully we have the money for it.
All right. I think that was it for transportation. Thank you.
Okay. We'll now move on to City and Safety Services. Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you, Madam President. We have several items tonight. First of all, the long-awaited solid waste contract. Looking at a 3-year renewal with a 1-year extension, which will be with the Athens Hawking Recycling Center. So there'll be more to come on that.
Are we going to get a copy of the actual contract? Has it been posted?
No, not yet.
Okay.
We need
What I need is
authorization.
authorization to enter into the negotiations to negotiate this contract.
And then, that makes sense.
I mean, I can provide the previous one, but the
No,
animal's changing so much with the
Right.
single stream.
Sure.
Yeah, I was just thinking that it passed by and, okay. Thank you.
The second item that we have tonight is the rapid water line replacement, which is going to be coming out of 740 TC 500 in the amount of $120,000, and that's for a rapid water line for the Athens Mall and much needed Elizabeth Street in getting that replaced as well. And our third item tonight, Member Cochran is going to bring forward. She's mentioned this before.
This is sort of a housekeeping opportunity for us to clean up code a little bit. It's not going to cost us anything, and hopefully it's not going to be very controversial. It's just something that came to my attention when I was looking at the city code when we were passing amendments to clarify our tobacco-free parks legislation. And so this is looking at Chapter 9.13, which is clean indoor air, and just taking out a lot of language that refers to places where one cannot smoke, such as grocery stores, restaurants, et cetera, healthcare establishments, which we no longer need because Ohio Revised Code now takes care of that for us. So we can basically take out a good section of code which is no longer relevant and is redundant. So not a big controversial ordinance or anything, just cleaning up the city's code a little bit. And we'll be bringing this forward next week then. Okay.
Thank you. Miscellaneous, is there anything that?
No, I'm just fascinated by the changes in here because 30 odd years later, you can remember designating where you could smoke. Now it's designated, you could designate non-smoking as a proprietor or business owner, and it's just a refreshing change. Times have changed.
I do have.
We're going to cover the other under finance and personnel.
Rich?
For the public safety building, facility planning. Okay.
Oh.
Jeff, where did Jeff go? There he
Yes,
is.
yes. Yeah, I do have one more item. Thank you.
He's got
two, actually. Real quick, I just received this earlier today, and this is interesting. This is something that was brought forward 5 to 6 years ago, which is actually exploring the idea of having a joint facility when it comes to Ohio University Police Department, Athens Police Department, EMS, 911, the Athens Fire Department as well. Ohio University has decided to have a plan, or at least a study, move forward to look at such a thing, to have a joint use facility, standalone facility. That, as I understand this, that it would, to have a study done, it would be roughly $30,000 that OU would contribute to this study, the possibility of the City of Athens contributing, as well as the Sheriff's Department, as I understand it.
At the estimate that as it stands now, and like I stated on the police chiefs, both of them are meeting with Director Bourne in Columbus this week, so we'll have kind of a firmer figure after that.
So possibly seeing this move forward as well.
Who are they meeting with, the police chiefs?
Director Bourne, he is the director of the Department of Public Safety that oversees the State Highway Patrol and all the other OICs to explore. And Chief Reimer just came back from his conference, and he's indicated there's some FEMA grants that may be available for these kind of shared service facilities. We're still going to have to put, as Chief Powers called it, skin in the game in terms of a feasibility study to look at that. So just as a start.
Just a question. What's the point of it? Why do we want to share a facility with another entity? How do we gain anything from it? What's the cost benefit?
Well, for example, when it was spoken about 5 or 6 years ago, you've got responding agencies coming from different angles. You've got the sheriff's office running down West Washington Street. They don't think that's necessarily ideal. So you have the APD dumping out on College, and you have OUPD over there on University Terrace. They feel that they also can, when you combine your resources in terms of dispatching, that when it will be, okay, we need APD at this corner of Mill and OUPD over here on South Green Drive. I just feel like they can coordinate their efforts better. And there's more funding available. The funding actually is more targeted, what they call these shared use facilities now.
I was just going to say, I've met with Fred Davis before, and Fred Davis, who's the director of the Athens County Emergency Management Agency, and he's mentioned this before as well several times, saying how nice would it be to have everyone siloed together to where you are able to have information exchange between, EMA, 911, having OU. It does. There is a lot of sense to this, but I think there's a lot to be explored yet on this and making something like this happen. And that's what this study would do: is start to explore, what could happen.
First concept, if I may, was for combined communications. So it'd be like the 911. For example, our APD has its own hotline, as it were, and you also have 911. The 911 is the only entity dispatching the fire department. So it was an idea of a joint communication center. Since that time, they've started to expand.
And what would happen to 911?
It's a physical facility which would co-locate. Like trying to, they're housed under a single roof.
Okay.
And, you know, it's to our benefit to make sure and ensure it's within the city limits. Of course, APD operations or AFD wouldn't move out, but that maybe, and you've heard the sheriff for years talking about wanting to find a more suitable location.
Right, but the problem that the sheriff has is by law, the sheriff has to be within the city. He has to be at the county seat. He can't be outside the limits.
Well, we
Not
want
anymore.
this to be.
They passed a law that elected official with the county now can be outside the city limits.
Elected official.
Or elected official can be out of the corporation limit.
But not the actual sheriff's department.
Yes.
I think that's.
Well, the sheriff, his department, his office, yeah, it can be outside the city.
Hasn't the EMS dispatcher area also complained about their basement that they're in? Isn't that one of the issues?
They're crunched in there in terms of expansion. I mean, it's actually a really safe place to be in the bunker, but
That's
other than that, they are squeezed.
Yeah.
Unless there's a flood. Madam President.
I was just going to draw a parallel at the university, sharing and co-locating resources. A recent example of that is the Academic Research Center that was jointly established and built by the College of Medicine and the College of Engineering. And what happens is you can share facilities, but you also get more opportunities for collaboration, new kinds of project ideas, improvements to situations. So I could potentially, see a value in at least investigating what might be to gain.
Funding. A lot of times, a lot of the funding agencies are looking for that joint collaboration. If there's grant funding out there, or like someone said, FEMA.
Member Canterbury?
First of all, I do apologize for speaking out without getting recognized. First, I do apologize for that. But I'm one of these older white people that remember years ago when 911 was first created. And the argument at that time was presented the same way that what we're hearing right now is space, cohabitation, trying to be moved from the facility they're in now to create a bigger space, because if anybody's ever been in that department, you'd see it's really, really cramped in there. It gets really hot. No matter if you turn the air on, it still gets really hot because of all the electronics they have in there. So it's been an idea that's even back, in the early 90s. They've talked about this. So this is, it's something that really needs to be looked at, because it is a good idea that needs to be pushed further.
Mayor, you've been waiting patiently.
I think the request right now is to get some money to do this and do a study. The caveat, of course, is shared service means you end up with a mix of goals. A location would have to be determined. It will be pricey if it's inside the city. The examples we might look at, of course, is the regional jail. And some people say that works and some people say that doesn't work. The other example, of course, is EMS, which used to be multi-county and no longer is, where it fell apart. So there's places where shared services worked and didn't work. I would be hesitant about doing this, but it probably won't occur in my term of office anyway. But the idea of putting all your eggs in one basket, wherever that basket is a concern, especially a security concern in this day of age. The synergy that could occur with the departments is probably something that needs to be examined. The wish list of what they'd like to see in one big fire, EMS, police, sheriff location. That could be explored. Again, but you have a whole set of different partners here and have different goals. So just be aware of that.
Thank you, Mayor. The other item I have is just a reminder to everybody about the move out drop off, where people can donate. They can drop off their household items, food, clothing, Thursday, April 30th, Friday, April 1st, and Saturday, Friday, May 1st, and Saturday, May 2nd. The places are the Athens Historical Society, Athens Middle School, Bromley Hall, Christ Lutheran Church, Convocation Center, Family Dollar Store, Fern Alley, First Christian Church, Mill Street at McKinley, Mother Earth Thrift Shop, North Court Street at West State Street, Palmer Place Apartments, Passion Works, River Park Apartments, Rollerball Lanes, Station Street Apartments, and Athens County Fairgrounds. And then on May 3rd at the Athens Historical Society, Fern Alley, Mother Earth Thrift Store, North Court Street, at West State Street
That's
and Rollerball Lanes.
Maybe we'll sign it. I did receive a note from Scott. I had asked him whether it was out there at this point, and it was. He did say it was a press release has been put out. It should be on our homepage at this point. And he says there'll be a video story, I think, coming up real soon. I'm seeing a nod right there for Caitlin there. I believe also the flyers will be passed out by the community residents assistants as well. And the idea is to get the stuff at least turned over, reused, or restored.
Yes.
Do you want to bring that up, Member Canterbury?
Just February, tomorrow at 12 noon, at the work, they're going to have a Workers' Memorial Day memorial remembrance, and it'll be at on the north-facing wall of Luster Sports Tavern here at 11 North Court, and sponsored by the Southeast Ohio Central Labor Council, AFL-CIO, and it's Mourn the Dead, Fight for the Living. Again, that's tomorrow, the 28th at 12 noon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll now turn to the Finance and Personnel Committee with the Chair, Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President.
I could say something.
No, running late here. We got a lot of items to cover, but I'll try to be brief if I take too long. I think that's what it went. First item, we have the Ohio Supreme Court registration fee. This is a request that's come from the law director's office. If I understand correctly, in the past, the law director would pay this registration fee, but the new law director, the administration can correct me if I'm wrong, has found that really need to seek approval from council. So in the form of an ordinance, and I understand the amount is roughly around $300.
Yeah, I think it's the number of people in the office, and it's just registration of their, I guess, with the Ohio Supreme Court. So in the past, I guess it was just paid out, but when Lisa was looking at the details and notes, I think she came across the fact that it really needs approval through council, or at least just to make sure everything's right. She's paying attention to that stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
So
we'll get some wording for you, I imagine, or at least
that'd be
Lisa will.
helpful, yeah.
Okay.
So, just out of
Question.
curiosity, yes. What is the registration paying for?
It pays for the, and again, I'll defer to the administration if I'm incorrect. It allows the legal staff, the lawyers within the department, to argue and take cases before the Supreme Court, the Ohio Supreme Court.
It's like a membership to a club, I suspect. I think of it that way. Register so you can appear. At least that's the way I understand it, But maybe I've got too much cynicism.
You can't come in the door unless you're registered, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they say, rather than ask, who are you, they know.
Oh, I see. Okay, next item, computer appropriations. More computers.
Yes, I'm sorry. I know you just did this a week ago, but we had a computer purchased in the HR department that needs to be come out of capital improvement fundings. That's less than $1,000. We have 5 computers from community center. That's at the most, I think, $4,000 to $5,000 that also needs appropriated into capital, and an anticipated $1,000 for a computer and a tablet at EPW. Get them all?
I think so.
Okay.
So what's the total coming up to?
There goes that simple math thing. 4, 5,
We're about
6.
6,000.
I am attempting to get them all in prior to the end of the week so that we can have an appropriations ordinance up on Monday and then not bother you for like 6 months, except for the major IT overhaul that we're not ready yet to bring that forward.
Right.
So.
Okay, so you're pretty sure this will be the last ones for a while?
We're hoping.
We're hoping.
Trouble is when you say, what do you need, all of a sudden their eyes glow with new toys. And as I say, some are needed and some are anticipation of replacements.
Right. Anyone have any questions on that? Okay. Next item I have here, the community center budget. I understand we need some more money for payroll.
Yes.
I believe the auditor brought this forward to our attention, and she is here this evening. If you...
Yes, oh, please, yes.
Actually, this has been a problem for several years. And we finally figured it out, what's happened. In the last couple of years, we've just asked you to appropriate additional money. About 4 years ago, the permanent part-time people at the community center were paid as contract employees through accounts payable. And then we started paying them, which is the appropriate way to do it according to PERS and the state auditors, through our regular payroll, even though they're part-time. Those are people like building supervisors, daycare instructors, karate instructors, fitness supervisors. There's about 34 of them, and they're on our payroll right now, and they were not included in the payroll projections. We did include the seasonal people and the permanent full-time people, but left them out, and so that's at least about $50,000 right there, although I believe we need closer to $90,000, I think, to get through the year. But I think that's the issue, that in the big fat spreadsheet that we do for every department, that section of employees was left out because we made that change. And they weren't always in our payroll system. So anyway, I think I put numbers out there, and
I think I'm thinking 94,000. That sounds
well, that's what the unappropriated balance is, and I was thinking we needed about 90. So I'd like to see at least appropriate part of it. There are a couple places in their budget that they've budgeted more this year than last year that I asked them to look at, but I didn't ever see where they might not need that much in supplies or vehicles or whatever it was. So, there's different ways to do that, but they absolutely are going to need more money in their payroll budget.
I would wonder why we wouldn't take it out of the 470, the community center
That was
debt
an
fund.
option that you threw out there, and that is our community center debt fund, which you all know has had built up a bit of a surplus over the 16 years of the note on the building, and there is money in there, and it is meant to be spent on the community center. So yes, to make it easier, and not encumber all of the community center's unappropriated balance, the money could just be moved out of there. So that would be a transfer.
Out of the 470?
Yes. There is enough money to do that.
We budgeted $486,000 for the debt service for this year, which will take us to December. I believe there's another $440 outstanding at that point for the next year, 2016. So you wouldn't really want to dip into that extra, you wouldn't want to dip into another 440, but basically the unappropriated balance, according to the last numbers I got from February, is at $1.078 million. So you could actually probably take a little bit out. Again, that's already after the appropriation of this 480 for this year. So that 1 million, we know we need 440,000 coming out of that for next year, for the end of 2016. So I would say work on that, but the next thing to do is get the staffing numbers right for next year, next cycle. Again, if you looked at it, I think last year he spent almost 600,000. I'd budgeted somewhere around 500,000. But I know we'd gone up and down a couple of years back and forth of the overage in the TC 100s. So the assumption was that was just leaning it down a little bit more. So these are things to think about at this point.
I guess I too would request that it comes out of that debt fund, since that debt fund is healthy, rather than take it down to zero in their appropriated balance.
Especially
and the money is still being collected this year, so.
Especially since you don't know what kind of anticipation of what could happen. I mean, we've got, even though we've got to build a new pool, we still have an old pool to play with, we still have mowers to fix, et cetera, et cetera. So there can be surprises along the way.
Councilmember Granberry.
So that money, you can transfer that out for payroll, They could be done payroll instead of.
For the community,
building
it's
or-
community center.
or maintenance.
Yes. It's for the community center actions, yes, if I understand correctly. You'd have to appropriate out of the 470, then transfer it to the 271.
Anybody have any other questions? So it looks like we'll take it from 470, appropriate it out, then transfer it to 271.
Okay, and it'd be nice to get a nice number of that. We're talking about 90,000 right now, is that what I'm hearing?
That's the number I keep hearing.
Okay.
I threw out 100, but whatever.
Okay.
Okay, next item, the tourism fund transfer.
Okay, that's, we discussed that a little bit off the top there. Essentially, we need, normally we're paying 35% to the Tourism Bureau and 35% with a cap of 55,000 to EDC, Economic Development Council. Normally, we're putting about 50-50 into the general fund and the rest into the tourism, 112, I'm sorry. What I have in there is about 20,000 at TC 500s. Originally, that was slated for doing some of the historical marker work, but we haven't moved on that in several years. So therefore, the best action would be to pull it out of the 500, TC 500 is 20,000. You'll still need at least another 9 to 10,000, which will probably have to come out of the general fund. If I understand, because your general fund has got, I don't know, let's see, somewhere about a neighborhood of 300,000 in there, which is not a lot, 370.
Right.
And change. So we have to be aware of that. But at the same time, this is to pay our required, agreements.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah. Madam Auditor, do you have any comments on this issue?
I'm sorry, I was talking. I didn't hear what you were talking about.
It's not that interesting anyway. We'll talk about the tourism fund.
Councilmember Reisner? Just a quick comment, just on the history of it. We had changed the percentage of the allocation several years ago. We did. Are we?
It's still going 50-50 according to the FinX. I mean, basically, the estimated revenue for the general fund is 180, and the estimated for the tourism is 176. So that's not a 70-30 mix, but again, it takes action of council probably to move it at this point.
Right, and that was my only other question, long-term, if we wanted to consider, reviewing that percentage.
I'm not sure we need to do that, and the reason it shows up as about 50-50 is in the beginning, it's about 70%. However, our obligation to the EDC is met just over halfway through the year. We often don't even make a payment for the fourth quarter. If we do, it's very small. Sometimes it's not even a full third quarter payment because they've met their, our $55,000 obligation. The ACCVB is a straight 35% period. What we have is another hotel opening here very soon, and that will, of course, be more revenue, which still has to be split.
Right.
But I would anticipate that we will meet our obligation with the EDC even sooner because of that, because the amount of money coming in. So I'm not sure that we need to make the change. I know I put that out there because I was worried, but we do need to do something about the 20,000 that's sitting down there if it's not meant to be for anything. We do absolutely need about 28,000 more to meet those obligations.
Okay. Auditor Heck, I'm glad you brought up the new hotel. It's 80 beds that's being added, but we've also had conversation recently about bed and breakfast in the city of Athens, which, depending on where that goes, that could also increase it and have things to where
Sure could. I think that's the idea that has been brought to the attention of council is so that they do pay their guest taxes.
And that's being worked on too.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. It's on the plate.
Yeah, essentially, if I look at my notations from the appropriation spreadsheet, Again, that 20,000 was for the historical markers, and I also had an earmark for Essence of Athens in the future. The break-even point, if I did the calculations right, is somewhere around 370,000 in the transient guest taxes when we actually can do a 50-50 cut between general fund and EDC and tourism, with the idea of the $55 cap was on that. So we're reaching at this point, because the estimated revenue for this year is about 356. We're not that far away from where we won't have to play around with this too much, provided we don't soak up money in TC 500s or anything like that. I fully expected us to work on historical markers much quicker, but it came down to what we want to see and how we want to put it out there. Talking to some members of the Historic Preservation Commission, I think I was told that the Ohio Preservation Ohio History Group has actually some money you can apply for historical markers, and they'll give you a set amount and help you with it. So that's the next thing to put them to task on that, or at least to investigate that. So therefore, in theory, that money may not be needed. But again, I wasn't sure how much we would need, what we wanted to look at. I mean, at the point when this was brought up 3 years ago, making the Near East Side a historical district, everybody, we were talking about everything from a gate, a gate very similar to what you see in Nelsonville, to a series of historical markers all around the perimeter. So that was an unknown amount. So again, it really didn't move forward. Mostly because we got distracted with other things. But we can, liquidate if need be.
Councilmember Patterson.
I just want to mention this, and I know, Mayor, you kind of hinted at this a minute ago as well, and that is that, Essence of Athens and having things, as you know, we've through the Athens Enhancement Fund, funded 2 projects, the traffic box wraps as well as the primary clarifiers, but it would be nice if we can get to the point where it is a true 50-50 split to maybe work out something to where there could be a percentage that can go to AMAC for possibly funding more art projects, maybe with a cap, maybe something similar to what the Convention and Visitors Bureau's, what's worked out with them as well. So.
And again, the Athens enhancement, the 250 will sunset eventually as a revenue source.
It will. Thank you.
Okay, so we're settled on that then? You're willing to give up the 20 to?
Yes.
Okay. Personnel, you're on.
Okay, thank you. I'm throwing a number of personnel requests out here tonight. We are still in the process of doing evaluation and job analysis, but separate from that, the DARE officer position, the chief of police under management's rights has determined that when it returns in August or early fall, it will be a reserve position, meaning a part-time, 50%, which therefore frees up a full-time patrol officer position, so that we feel that will best suit our needs. We have a number of retirements already occurring. We're already in the queue vetting candidates, but it's going to continue as the year goes on. So that's one change. For both Athens Parks and Rec and City Council, our Athens Parks and Rec under seasonal maintenance, every other description has as needed, as it were. That has a limitation of 3. Due to vacancies and movement and what have you, we have 1 mower right now, 1 person individual who can mow and also try to direct operations at the same time. So we'd like to increase that to either as needed or up to 5 or 6 under the staffing ordinance. Again, these are part-time, 120, or whatever seasonal, 120. And because the growing season is so long, if we start someone here in May, and they have to leave by August, we still have months to mow, so we'd have to like to do that. Council aides is the same issue. They're capped at a certain number. They've got people leaving for summer or internships, so we'd like to increase that as well. I don't know if you want to speak to it, or Scott?
Just make it an as-needed basis.
Okay.
The money is already budgeted.
And then the last 2 are 2 requests for an intern in the IT department and also in the mayor's office, perhaps. We're still looking, we want to look at our 100s and see what we can support.
I
Councilmember
just
Cochran?
have one question. Who are council aides?
Those are your TGC technicians.
Okay.
But I think, is that not the title? Perhaps the title needs to be. Okay.
We see them every day.
One's sitting right in
One's
front
right
of us.
there.
There are
Councilmember Pepe.
hand holders.
Oh, I
have a
forgot
question
one.
about the police.
Okay, and I did forget a significant
Okay, go
one.
ahead, you first.
EPW, I told him I was going to come tonight and tell him Andy needs a mom. He had a secretarial support who had expanded duties. That individual has resigned. In order to run operations, he feels he needs a manager of operational maintenance. That's his mom. That's where I got the mom. And we'd like to create that position under EPW and delete the other position. Now, there's going to be a little bit different rate of pay. Not too much a significant change, though, because of the person that held it, the longevity and the rate of pay they were at. But this is to help with managing daily operations and assisting with the supervisor crews. What often happens is Jessica has the projects, and she's detailed. If you've ever been to her office, and the spreadsheets and everything's on the walls and the maps and everything's in a lot of that. So her focus has to be on that and on the ground when she's out at Richland or West Union. Andy is trying to manage, and he has a couple managers other than, but it's the phone calls like, is this really deemed a hazard that has to be addressed right now? What we may view as a pothole at one corner is significant and impacting vehicles at another corner. So that kind of position is what he's like to
So you want a
create.
triage manager.
Okay.
Sounds about right.
A mom.
That's a mom.
So my question on the police, I think as an educational effort, you see things in the newspaper where people say we need more police or we need more of this, and when we're down police positions. And I don't think people understand that you've got people training to be police officers. There's a queue that goes on with all of that, and actually we're not necessarily down police officers, but there's just people in different states of training or maybe recovery or
I would like
whatever.
that to be the case, and it should be shortly, but no, we have not hired from that latest pool of candidates.
And that's an important thing. That's
That is
what we
an
need.
important item. They do not bring it forward to the chief and the service safety director until they've been completely vetted through the process.
Correct.
We have two confirmed retirements in the next month or so, and one potential. But we have a real division in our workforce in APD, so we have a number that are going to be eligible to retire, and the rest are they're not even middle-aged yet, so I don't know how else to say that.
So explain that a little bit more. So what you're saying is that we have positions that will need to be filled, but it also takes a long time to have somebody up to speed to go out on the street, so to speak.
Sure, 6 months if there's superior candidates, once they come on and have all the training, could take a year. I can tell you under fire, it takes a full year before they're released to actually conduct true firefighting duties.
Councilmember Patterson.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because the person is under supervision. So it's now you might have an individual there, but you also have another officer who's supervising that individual. So it's two.
I just think that's important for people to understand that it takes a long time to bring a person on board. And then your candidate pool, you just said that you've not...
I haven't brought anyone forward yet.
Correct.
And we have to replenish that every once in a while, put out an application, bring them in.
And we're doing it again.
Yeah, just so we get to build up that stable, so to speak, to look at.
Right.
And we haven't even touched on fire. Fire's even longer in terms of training.
Yes.
A firefighter has to go through. Anyway, it's not something that just happens overnight.
Although this last round where we have candidates testing was the first time that we included it's not a requirement, but what's the other word you use? Would rather have at the NFPA already had gone through their firefighting.
Okay, I want to allow one more question, Councilmember Pappen.
Since we were talking about personnel, months ago, we discussed the, and I think you're probably hitting on this with the pay band, but I just want to make sure regarding the litter control officer and his space in the, we had discussed moving him up to the grade of a code officer due to the duties that he does in the city.
What I'm trying not to do is to bring those things piecemeal to you.
Right, okay.
We fully anticipate having something by the 1st of June that we can bring forward and say, here's where the disparities lie in existing, and asking to get that changed, and then moving forward.
Thank you.
That's logical.
Thank
But
you.
in terms of the seasonal, we're behind in our grass cutting. It's been growing quite a bit, as you probably noticed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
We wrap that up? Okay. Parking garage improvements, bond payment. We have an expert here. Madam Auditor, would you like to speak to that?
Well, yes, I had put a request out there. We have just taken out this bond, and our first payment won't be due until December 1st. But again, that payment will need to come out of our parking garage debt fund rather than our parking garage fund. And we paid that off a few years ago, so it's sitting there dormant, but it's time to put money in there. And I would prefer that we move that money in sooner rather than later so that we don't get caught off guard, because it does have to be transferred out of the parking garage fund. And there is enough money to do that. This first payment is about $55,000. Sorry. It's 53 or something like that. The first payment is what's considered interest and we'll do 2 of these every year, interest and principal, and then the principal payment will be in June, and that's about $22,000.
So this would be a transfer and appropriation?
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Nothing to add. No. Work towards it.
Any questions about this? Okay. All right.
Any other items?
Oh, I wish I could say no, but there are.
Who's that? Oh, John.
Is it safe to go on now?
Yes.
Okay. Under miscellaneous, we have the fiscal policy that I believe the state auditors have recommended that we put in place.
Yes, and I apologize. I just put this out today. There was an issue that came up with an overpayment to a couple employees in the city, and this happens. Underpayments, overpayments that need to be corrected. And in this case, I asked the state auditors for their opinion on this. And they said that as far as they're concerned, they won't, if it's over $500 or more, they would issue a finding for recovery. Findings are like the last thing, you don't want those in your audit. They're the worst thing. They're included in the audit. They're not in the management letter. Looks really bad. No more award for us, if we get those. And there's no reason for us to. Findings for recovery, findings are mismanagement of your budget or finance issues. Findings for recovery means that money has to be paid back. So if we don't, and they find something, and then next year when they're looking at it, then it becomes, kind of a public thing. So what we would like to do, because, these things happen. We've made mistakes in our offices over the years. This one wasn't ours, but it happens. And so I'd like a policy. What the auditor said that amounts less than 500 can be approved by the legislative authority, which is council. However, rather than every time we have one of these, which hopefully isn't that often, and coming to council and going through 3 readings, if we had an actual fiscal policy that was approved by you, that would be acceptable, and that would be what we would go by, and everybody would know up front before we do that. We also would like to keep it at that $500 threshold, which seems high. However, when you talk about trying to recoup an overpayment of, say, $200, the cost effectiveness of that is questionable in our office. That means dealing with either PERS or police and fire pension, federal, state, and local income taxes, Medicare. All those things have to be reconciled, and it's not really an easy process. And so that's what I'd like you to do. I'd like to, and like I said, I just heard from the state auditor late Friday, so I put this out there today so that we could start the process, because we do have an issue in front of us right now. So I'd like to get it started soon and get that policy in place, which also means I'd like it to be effective January 1st and make it for the whole year. And that way we can cover ourselves for, a miscalculation that was made early in the year.
Patterson?
So you just mentioned, you gave the example of $200. So basically what you're saying is that it's almost more expensive for a $200 overpayment to go and retract that than at the 500. So the 500 is like the tipping point to where...
That's what the state auditor put out there, so I'm fine to go with that. Okay. Personally, I probably would have lowered it a little bit, but I talked to other people in my office, and they don't really feel that it's worth it if it gets to be too much more than that. This isn't all that common, and I'm only talking about miscalculations by my office or the administration. Now, we get timesheets that are miscalculated, and those we usually find right away and reconcile it on the next paycheck. I would like to still continue doing that. We have 24/7 operations. Often the employee isn't available to sign off on their timesheet when they need to be turned in, so we go ahead and put it in our system so as to get them paid, and then they find out that the supervisor put some overtime or something on there extra, or they didn't put it on, and we just fix that the next time around. Those situations I would like to continue to do. It's the other miscalculations that aren't caught right away and become an issue of payback and an issue for the employees.
So you're not necessarily talking payroll as much here. You're talking about payments into other funds, or?
No, I'm talking payroll. If we get, say, an employee, increase or something, and we put it in our system, we start paying them, and then we find out that that was a miscalculation and that we've overpaid them, and we're trying to get that money back. And we had to do that last year, although those employees were all over $500 each that owed. There were 3 of them. And we're talking about that, it was a miscalculation by someone, and they were overpaid. And I think dealing with an employee who doesn't know any better, and at this point, as I said, this happened at the very beginning of the year. We're in April, and so I think it's, just not really the right thing to do is to go back to that employee and say, oops, you owe us $250 or something like that. So,
Do you have a draft of the policy that you're thinking?
No, we've made some notes, but I would like to get that out, soon. And, you guys can think about it. I can send you any other information that you have. I don't know if there's anything else that I had that you might want to know.
Well, how soon could you have a draft together?
We'll probably work on it tomorrow.
Okay.
This was a Monday. They're usually kind of hectic. I didn't get everything done that I wanted to, but...
I guess I'm just a little concerned. I think at my job, if I put down the wrong amount of money, I know they would want that back. Maybe they would work it out with me where, it would come out of the next paychecks.
Well, that's how we've always operated in my office in the past. We've always recouped any money owed to us. However, there has been some discussion about this instance to employees and some pushback, and so I asked the state auditors for their opinion, and they've made it pretty clear that it's not necessary from an auditor standpoint that we recoup those monies. So. let's see if I can see what her wording was on that. The amounts are very small and would cause a problem in employee relations / morale. I just think that, the employees don't know anything about this. And
So
it's
it happens
been-
someplace else.
It's been almost 4 months we've been overpaying. So, and it's about $200 and $250.
So for instance, maybe the wrong hourly rate was being calculated.
Right.
And
The
it's
percentage was, added on to their hourly rate incorrectly. It happens. Like I said, last year, those were our mistakes in payroll, and, the employees weren't very happy about it. It's a difficult situation. But that was obviously too much money. It was over $2,000 for all of 3 of them, and we wouldn't have let that go. And under this policy, we wouldn't have let that go. But in this instance, I'm just trying to make it easy on supervisors and the employees, and, And you could lower that threshold if you wanted. I guess I wouldn't go below 300, since we have...
Yes, Councilmember Canterbury.
Just a quick question. If an employee is underpaid, do they contact you?
Oh, yeah.
So if they're overpaid, they don't?
Nope. I don't know that they ever have. And actually, there was some pushback last year about that. The 3 employees, they all knew right away they'd been overpaid. We used the wrong percentage rate when doing a payout. And nope, they all knew it. And someone else from their department called our pay, because they were bragging about it.
Oh, yeah.
So no, they don't call if they're overpaid, and but they absolutely, that day or the next day, they're letting us know if they've been underpaid. That's human nature. Doesn't surprise me. But.
Any further question? Well, that's all I have for under miscellaneous, so I guess I'm done.
I'll get something out there as soon as I can.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Auditor Heck. Seeing no further items for business on finance and personnel, we'll consider ourselves adjourned for the night. It's 9:13 p.m. Thank you very much.